Hi, everybody. When my kids were young, they used to watch this show called Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. Maybe you watched it as well. And one of the aspects of the show that always made me laugh was that there was this teacher who never came to school and the kids just learned by watching her on TV. So this kind of reminds me of that. As you know, I have jury duty. For future students that may use this video, and that might not sound right, uh, I had jury duty when I made it. So for my current students, you know that I haven't been in class in quite a while. So luckily, we have a substitute who is social studies certified, and we're very lucky to have her, and she's more than capable of walking you through some of the curriculum. But I just thought for today, I wanted to talk to you and do a little screencast video. Let's see here. So moving forward, um, I will be in school here or there. I do have jury duty, as I said, but court is not in session every day. So you will see me once this week, maybe twice, and from there, hopefully, I won't be too much longer. Let's see what else is there to say before I dive into some content here. You're probably missing the jokes, so let me tell you a quick joke. Although I don't really have a joke to tell you, I got some horrible news. I went to the doctor. They told me I am colorblind, and let me tell you, that really came out of the purple. Did not see that coming. All right, now you're like, oh, we didn't miss that joke, Mr. Sherman. So let's move forward a little bit. So we just got done with period three. Period three starts in 1754, the French and Indian War, and ends in 1800, Jefferson's election. I purposefully stopped at 1796, and I don't want your heads to spin with all these dates, but 1796 is John Adams's presidency. Now, as you will find out, I like to do this large activity with John Adams's presidency, and we're just going to try to make that fit in whenever I get back from jury duty. So we're going to hop over John Adams's presidency a little bit right to Thomas Jefferson's presidency. The election of 1800 is a particularly important election because it is the first time that we have a transition of power from one ideological political party to another. So Washington, of course, kind of stands alone. He's unique. After Washington, John Adams becomes president, which is not a significant change in that they were part of the same party. They were actually part of the same administration. But when Jefferson wins the presidency in 1800, it is particularly important because Jefferson, it's a change in power. And one of the themes that we're going to see is that Jefferson refers to this election as a revolution. And it is oftentimes referred to as the Revolution of 1800. As I always say to you guys, we're going to be critical of that. We're going to think critically about that. Was it truly a revolution? I'm not saying that it wasn't. I just want you guys to think critically about whether or not it truly deserves that title. So before we do that, though, let's get into the election a little bit. I love this campaign commercial, campaign cartoon, and I believe I had you guys read a little article about this. The election of 1800 is to this day considered to be one of the nastiest elections in American history. We just got finished with a very a contentious election where a lot of mud was thrown on both sides. And whenever these elections occur, it causes people to kind of look back and say, oh, has it ever been this bad before? And it really was. It was this bad almost from the beginning. The first truly contested election, 1800, although 1796 was contested, but 1800, we see one of the nastiest elections ever. And look closely at this cartoon. So you have Jefferson here. Behind him is the devil. I know you might be trying to read the text in the bubbles there. Don't worry about it. I can't read it myself, but what do they say? A picture's worth 1,000 words. Look what's happening. He's with the devil. By the way, he's drinking whiskey, and we know what that's in reference to. Not only is that a pretty pejorative statement about Jefferson's personality there, he's drinking, but also about Jefferson's belief that the Whiskey Rebellion shouldn't have been put down the way that it was. And what is he doing? He's metaphorically pulling down the pillars of government as this eagle is shooting some type of democracy rays at him. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. So this was one of the nastiest elections in American history. The Sally Hemings uh, rumors come up. Things are said about John Adams. I think in the other article you read that he was called a hermaphrodite. I mean, it was a really nasty election. The election of 1800, one of the major issues is something called the Alien and Sedition Acts. That was something that I also had you look at, and is actually, as we find out, as we're going to find out, it's going to be the focus of that activity that I'm looking forward to doing with you. There's also this fundamental difference in how they view government. John Adams, who's part of the Federalist Party, sees the importance of having a larger, more powerful Navy, Army, centralized government. Jefferson, who's still kind of the rebel at heart, right? You might remember Jefferson's quote after Shays' Rebellion that the tree of liberty needs to be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Like Jefferson was kind of holding on to this kind of revolutionary ideals. This is why he's sometimes referred to as an idealist. And he does not believe that the large Navy should be maintained. After all, we're not at war. But there's also electoral college politics at play. So in order to win the presidency, even back then, New York was a very important state. I would say even more importantly back then, as you're going to see in a second, I have an electoral college map from there to show you. New York was very important. Aaron Burr was from New York. There's a little play that they talk about this a little bit. I don't know if I've mentioned it, but I'd encourage you strongly to listen to some of those songs, especially the song entitled The Election of 1800. So Jefferson chooses Burr to be his vice president with the hopes that Burr will help Jefferson win New York. There's the Electoral College map that I showed you. If I were to show the Electoral College map of 1796, where John Adams defeated Thomas Jefferson, you would see that John Adams won New York. So New York, in some ways, is like one of these first battleground states. Today, of course, it's not a battleground state. It's firmly in the side of the Democrats. But back then, it was a battleground state up for grabs, and a big state at that with 12 electoral votes. So choosing Aaron Burr to be Jefferson's vice president was a politically motivated decision. But things were different in 1800, as we're going to see. So the way that the president and the vice president were determined in 1800 was whoever got the most votes was president and whoever got the second most votes was vice president. So essentially, if that were still the system today, Hillary Clinton would be Donald Trump's vice president. As you can imagine, this was later going to be changed, and it's going to be changed because of this election. Aaron Burr, who is portrayed as this opportunistic, ambitious to a fault individual in the play Hamilton, is true to that. Burr says, whoa, they tie because they were running together. So if you voted for Jefferson, you voted for Burr, and they ended up getting a tie. And Jefferson's like, oh, this is great. This is just how we planned it. I'll be president and you're vice president. And Burr is like, whoa, who said I wanted to be vice president? I could be president. And attempts to take the presidency from Jefferson. Aaron Burr versus Jefferson. So Jefferson has a lot of political enemies as a Democratic Republican, as someone who fought against Hamilton for all those years, who was the founder of the Democratic Republican Party. And in the House of Representatives, there were many Federalists. Now, if no single individual gets the needed majority of electoral votes, then the election goes to the House of Representatives. That has happened a handful of times in American history, and this is the first time. So Alexander Hamilton, to explain this play that I talk about so much that you might enjoy and you might know of, but a lot of people might not understand what's going on in that play. What's happening in the play is the House of Representatives gets to decide. The House of Representatives was filled with Federalists. So Alexander Hamilton, as the leader of the Federalists, essentially got to pick the president. He could have told all of his followers, all of the Federalists, to vote for Burr. As you probably know, well, you do know because Burr was never president, he tells them to vote for Jefferson. This is particularly surprising because, as you know from the play and from our discussion in class, Hamilton and Jefferson were political rivals. They disagreed on just about everything. They argued constantly. But Hamilton believed that Burr was dangerous. And boy, it sounds like I'm quoting from the play, and I guess I am, but that Burr had no ideals. You know, there's that line in the play that was actually spoken by Hamilton. If you stand for nothing, what will you fall for? And as we're going to see, Burr was actually even more scheming than the play alludes to. There's some great stories. Here's some actual quotes. He is for or against nothing, but as it suits his interests or ambition, I feel the religious duty to oppose his career. If we have, this is my favorite of the quotes, if we have an embryo Caesar in the United States, 'tis Burr, you know, a, a little baby despot in the making. And later he says, there is no doubt that upon every virtuous and prudent calculation, Jefferson is to be preferred. He is by far not so dangerous a man and has pretensions to character. The House of Representatives choose Jefferson overwhelmingly, and then soon after the 12th Amendment is passed, the 12th Amendment provides for a party ticket. So when people run for the presidency, they run on a ticket. So you didn't vote for Trump, you voted for Trump Pence. You didn't vote for Clinton, you voted for Clinton Kane. You didn't vote for Obama, you voted for Obama Biden. You get the idea. You vote for a ticket, and you even see that on bumper stickers. So that puts to rest this little awkward moment from American history. It was awkward because now Burr's vice president. Jefferson wants nothing to do with Burr. From here, Burr has this incredible this incredible pursuit of power over the next few years, where he is embroiled in one scandal after another. He's tried for treason for attempting to break the Louisiana Purchase off so that he could become king. He later runs for the governorship of New York, where Alexander Hamilton, an incredibly popular New Yorker, again campaigns against him. This is actually where the famous duel happens. It's not after the presidential election. That is one tiny, tiny little change into history that Lin-Manuel Miranda made. So we talked about this. I would encourage you strongly to listen to a couple of those songs. The election of 1800 is particularly good. So enough about Burr. Did Jefferson destroy America or what? So why would you draw this cartoon in the first place? You had reason to fear Jefferson. Think about that Shays Rebellion quote, where he's like, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of tyrants and patriots. He says a lot of things that are scary to people who want a strong government. He was against enforcing the whiskey tax. He was against a big navy. There was a fear. He was against Alexander Hamilton's financial plan. There was a real fear. I love this cartoon because it illustrates a true fear that Americans had that Jefferson would destroy this new, strong federal government. And we've talked so much about that fear that Americans had of a central government that you understand, I'm sure, how people felt about Jefferson's view of that government. So what actually happens? The Revolution of 1800. Was it a revolution? Well, Jefferson does make changes. He repeals that whiskey tax. He repeals the excise tax. He reduces debt. Jefferson believed in a small government. He didn't, this quote is not attributed to Jefferson, but the government that governs least governs best is an ideology that Jefferson had. He pardoned seditionists, which we're going to talk about later. And you've already did an activity with the seditionist papers that I will talk about later. And he transfers from a large navy to these tiny gunboats. Much more important are the things that he kept the same. He kept the National Bank. If you listen to that play Hamilton, which I keep talking about, there's a line where he says his financial plan was a work of genius. I couldn't change it if I tried, and I tried. That's another tiny little mistake in the play. Hamilton, I'm sorry to say that. I meant to say Jefferson didn't try. Jefferson realized that the financial plan was working and kept it. He doesn't fire Federalists. He keeps qualified people in positions of power, um, and he retains a strong central government. He even expands the power of the central government when he buys the Louisiana Purchase. So Jefferson, what the hell was Jefferson thinking? So he was not true to his rhetoric. Later, when we talk about Andrew Jackson, I'm going to share with you that I often like to say that Jackson was more Jeffersonian than Jefferson was, that Jefferson's rhetoric was much harsher than what he actually does. So here's this quote. Jefferson said that the election of 1800 was as real a revolution in the principles of our government as that of the 1776 was in its form. Um, do you think that Jefferson was correct in calling the election of 1800 a revolution? We're definitely going to be talking about that in more depth later. But for now, I want you to look briefly at the two political parties of the time. We have the Federalists, organized and led by Alexander Hamilton. As far as sectional concerns go, it was more of a party that focused on Northeastern interests, especially manufacturing, especially the wealthy, especially banking. He believed in a strong centralized government, was pro-English, and believed in something called the loose construction of the Constitution, which is this idea that the Constitution should be interpreted loosely, that the federal government should be given uh, broad powers and not held strictly word to word to restrictions on the Constitution. How about Jefferson? Jefferson's party is called the Democratic Republicans. I'll do my best Chandler Bing here. Could that be any more confusing? Later, they dropped the Republican, and of course, it becomes the Democrats that we're familiar with. It was led by Jefferson in terms of sectional interests. It was a party that was stronger in the South. It represented poor farmers. It believed that the state should have more power. Understandably, for its day, it was more pro-French than English, and he believed in a strict construction of the Constitution, except when he didn't, because Jefferson, depending on how you view Jefferson, Jefferson is either a hypocrite or a pragmatic idealist, meaning that sometimes he went against his own ideas for the good of the nation, like buying the Louisiana Territory. So this screencast has already gone a little longer than I intended. I have not created this yet, but by the time you see this, I will have created a Google form for you to address this question. It's, I think, a pretty interesting question when you look at the two men and what they supported. Try to apply their ideas to modern politics. What political party would Jefferson be a part of today? What political party would Hamilton be a part of today? Give me a brief explanation as to why. Before, as I X this out, let me wish you guys the best. I'm looking forward to getting back into class, and I hope everything's good.